Hi, this is Penny Sansevieri with Author Marketing Experts, and I am here with my fabulous co-host, Amy Cornell, and we have worked together for a long time. So pleased to be introducing you to this new book marketing and book publicity podcast. Amy, welcome, and thank you so much for being here.
Thank you. I'm very excited.
So we're going to keep, one of the things that Amy and I talked about is keeping this really short. So we want to keep this to 15, 20 minutes max, because I just felt like 45 minutes of book marketing might get a little bit boring. I mean, Amy, do you agree?
Right. Yeah. And there's so much that you could be doing and it gets so overwhelming. And then it just sounds like 45 minutes of homework, and nobody wants to do 45 minutes of homework. It sounds terrible. So keeping it short, keeping it focused, meaning that you can tune in and pick up a couple tips and run with that and know that it's something that you can immediately start incorporating into your own book promotion is, I think it's kind of, it's so much easier to digest than thinking like, okay, I'm going to tune in and I need to take a ton of notes because I've got months of work ahead of me. It's like,
right, exactly. And that's part of the issue too, I think, with book marketing, is that one of the reasons I really wanted to do this podcast for months, actually, but we wanted to carve out the time and make sure that we actually knew what authors wanted. Because when you ask, and when I do teaching and I stand, in a group, in a room of authors, and I say, what do you most want to learn? The answers are sometimes a little bit all over the board, but at the same time, one of the biggest pieces of what it always comes down to is book sales. So it's never about, sometimes it's about fame. Sometimes it's about, I want my book to be a movie, but those are end results of a whole bunch of micro goals that you have to have in order to get to that place where you're seeing the Amazon bestseller flag on your book and you're selling books like crazy. And so what we want to focus on for this first few, I think 3 or 4 podcasts that we're going to do, is sales. So, and sales is a big topic, as I mentioned. So one of the things that I want to bring Amy in first off, because Amy did, so just so you know, kind of our roles in the company, Amy does everything.
That's a gross exaggeration.
But by the time I get on the phone with an author and I talk to them about our marketing, Amy has already kind of gone through, or she has, not kind of, but she's gone through and she's vetted them. So she's had a conversation in email with them. She's talked about their goals. She's looked at their website if they have one, or their book cover if their book is already out. And so Amy, what, in your extensive experience of vetting folks that come into our company, talk to me a little bit about what you're seeing in terms of where authors are kind of, what they need to focus on to make sales happen.
Right. And can I take a moment just to brag real quick, Penny?
Yes.
About,
please do.
Yeah, the new Amazon book, new as of now, when she's talking about that bestseller flag.
Yay.
You've had that bestseller flag for going on, is it over 3 weeks now already?
Yes, it's over 3 weeks. I'm so excited. I don't know if you can hear my smile, but I'm just so happy. I'm so thrilled.
Well, and I just figured, based on what you were saying about all the pieces that have to come together in order to get to the point where you're selling books consistently and things like that, it's like, you've done this for a long time. You do this for a living. You know what you're doing, and it still takes a lot of consistent hard work, and the pieces all have to come together. Otherwise, Penny, you should be able to, publish a book and wake up the next day. It's like, oh, it's automatically a bestseller. I don't have to do anything. It's like, That's not how it works at all. But I did want to take a bragging moment that, that even knowing what we know, it doesn't absolve us of the consistent strategic, planning that you have to do in order to make a book a success.
Right. That's absolutely true. And I'm glad that you mentioned that, because one of the things because I've been asked, like, well, people look at this book and they say, well, you're a marketing person. Of course, you're going to have this bestseller. Of course, first off, I'm in a super non-sexy category. Book marketing, I'm sorry. I know we're doing a podcast on this. Book marketing is kind of like flossing. Like, we all know we need to floss, but you know what I mean? But you go in the dentist, like, are you flossing every day? And you kind of like, well,
kind of fib.
Like,
we all let's be honest.
Right, I'm flossing in my head.
Right. But I meant to market my book last week.
Yeah, I meant to market my book, but I don't get around. So first off, it's in a super non-sexy category. Secondly, yeah, okay, so we've been doing this for 19 years, and you could say, well, that's a major platform. And it is, and it kind of isn't, right? I mean, you still have to work it. And when authors say, I need to get more readers for my book, I look at, I'll have a conversation with them and say, how about you focus on building relationships? Because one of the things that you and I talked about with regards to the Amazon book was I spent a lot of time building relationships with people, right?
Yes. The people that showed up for you are regulars. They really are.
Yeah.
They're the people that respond to pieces we put in the newsletter. They're people that engage with us on social media. Those are the people that showed up when you released the book and helped make it a success.
Right, exactly. But those relationships are also built on my own integrity when I put out a book. So I'm not going to put out a book that is subpar, right? I may not always hit it out of the park with books. Like sometimes I think, I should have added a chapter here or there. And we all know as authors, at the minute that you publish a book, the first thing you think of is, I wish I would have done X, like everything can be edited, and we always think about that afterwards. But I always try to put out a really quality book. And so to that end, right, that is one of the things that the thing that you leave your readers with is your book. And if your book is subpar, that reader ends at being a reader. They will never morph into a relationship, which is the thing that helps you sell more books.
Exactly. Yeah. Readers, we were talking about this the other week, and it's like a reader will buy one book, but somebody that you've established a relationship will buy all of your books. Right. And it's like, aim for that. Why aim for one sale when you can aim for sales for every single book that you put out there? Like that just seems like a no-brainer.
Absolutely. And, we talk about, so this leads me into kind of a nice opening, because audience focus, you and I have a conversation about that.
Oh, yeah.
We talk about this so much. Where do you feel, with all of the vetting that you do with the authors that we are so fortunate that contact us, where do you feel like some of them miss the mark, or maybe some of them hit it out of the park?
Right. I think the ones that are most successful that we end up working with are really in tune with who they're writing for. And, an example that I always come back to is kind of, if you can describe who your reader is in just a couple words or a few words, like, moms with young kids or small business owners, it's like, that is definitely not focused enough to establish a book marketing plan and a platform around. It's way too broad. And the people that we work with that do really well are really in tune with who their buyer market is, why they're buying the book, what they're going to get out of it, what their interests are. You know what I mean? It's this massive, they really understand who their potential buyer is, and they've made everything that they do caters to that. And it's really so smart.
Yeah.
It's really so smart.
Yeah, that's absolutely true. And they are, and that's the thing, that the generalities that a lot of times authors lead with. There's a great example, right? Years ago, when Chicken Soup for the Soul first started. Now everybody knows about Chicken Soup for the Soul, but when these guys first started publishing the very first book, they went after a core specific audience. And honestly, you're going to laugh, but their core audience were women who shopped at Hallmark, right? And they focused on that group exclusively, for the reasons that we know now. The books are very feel good. The books tell great stories. The books also make great gifts. And that's where their core focus was. And they dropped every other marketing idea just to focus on that particular age group. Now you might say, okay, women that shop at Hallmark, Penny, that's also pretty darn general. But these are not women who are, picking up cards at the grocery store, right?
Right.
So there's not that people who shop at the grocery store for cards, because I've done it, are not thoughtful. But I'm a Hallmark shop. Like sorry. Right. I know we have this whole back and forth around the Hallmark Christmas movies, which.
Oh, that's funny.
But, so
no.
I love going to Hallmark. I mean, so there was a particular focused demographic.
I love that. That is so
Yeah.
smart. Actually, when you said it, when you were like, okay, you're going to laugh, I'm like, I love this so much. And no, it's so true though. And we created, and I know again, we were like, no, we don't want to give you too much homework, but we do our reader profile Brainstorm, which in the name probably sounds like, oh, I have to think about a lot of stuff, but it is really, it's free. You can get it from us. We'll put it in the notes. We'll share it on social. But it's perfect that you brought up the Hallmark example, because it is one of those worksheets that really gets you thinking about the details like that. Where do they shop? What other interests do they have? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Where are they showing up online? And those kind of details, you're like, well, that has nothing to do with buying my book. It's like, but it really, really does.
Yes.
And digging into those and kind of setting yourself up for success in that way, and really being an expert on who your audience is, not just on the superficial level of, I think they need to buy my book, is really what you have to do at the get-go. That's the foundation that should, kind of all of your book marketing ideas should kind of spawn from who this person is at a deeper level.
Right. Exactly. And that's where I know, some of you listening may be saying, well, this is great, Penny and Amy. Thanks for the show, but my book is already out.
Right.
What do I do? So let me give you an example. We work with this author, and I cite her a lot because we've worked with her for a number of years. We work with this author, and she published a book that she originally dubbed paranormal time travel romance. That was kind of her original audience. And the author is Christina George. She does a lot of contemporary romance, right? And she really wanted to publish this book. It was one of those things where it was outside of her norm. She's like, I really like this book. And it did okay. But the problem was she had never read paranormal romance books. So she made the assumption that because the lead character was psychic, right, that this was a paranormal romance when it really wasn't. So, and she doesn't mind me using her, like, wow, you're calling out your authors, Penny, aren't you lovely? No, I told her that I was going to use her on this podcast. So what happened is that, she started to get feedback from readers via the reviews. They liked the book, but it was less paranormal than they really thought, because paranormal XYZ. So after, some consideration and reading paranormal romance books, she realized that even though it kind of walked the line a tiny bit, it really wasn't in that genre. So if you're, and this book, like I said, had already been out. So she switched the description on Amazon, and she changed out the subtitle, because if you've taken any of my Amazon classes, your book is fiction, put a subtitle on Amazon.
Yep.
And she changed that out, and she pulled it completely out of the paranormal romance, and she put it in, contemporary. There was some time travel elements, and that was legitimate. And that was, 30% of the book. So that was a line that she could definitely walk. So if your book is already out, right, and you say, well, it's in the wrong, I marketed it the wrong way, it's the wrong readers, there are some things that you can do. So you can, like what she did, very simple. She didn't even touch the cover, but you may have to get down and dig deeper and change up the cover, right? You may have to do some work if you want to, if you want to try to give this book another, some more life. But
Right.
Amy, what are some other ways? So if somebody's listening to this thinking, gosh, maybe I'm marketing the wrong readers for my book, maybe that's my problem. What are some things that you typically recommend to some folks who contact us that they can fix or look at, or,
Sure. Well, and a lot of it is trying to, along with figuring out who your reader is. And I will say, just to add in the silver lining to digging into who your reader really is, instead of going so broad, is that it gives you a lot more focus when it comes to who you're marketing to and the strategies you're using. And it actually becomes a lot more manageable, versus thinking like, oh my gosh, I've got think how big the contemporary romance sphere is just all on its own. But when you actually start digging into the niche subgenres of romance and who you really wrote for, all of a sudden the people that you're trying to reach are a lot more attainable versus this like massive crowd, So I will say, there is something to be said about quality over quantity that you get from digging deeper into who your reader really is. But you can figure out a lot by doing, some competitive analysis. And I know that sounds like, ooh, that sounds scary, but it's actually a lot. I know we're all like back in like college taking like general ed courses now, but no, but no, there's a lot of things you can look into. Like keywords are one. Start searching for the keywords and this is a really basic one. Obviously, we've got keyword videos on our Amazon video membership that really dig into this, but start searching for the keywords that you think fit your book or that you already have plugged into Amazon and see what comes up. And I think one of the biggest signs is like, do those books look like books that you should be competing with? Do those look like books that your competitors are reading? Same thing with the categories. Those two kind of go hand in hand in this regard. And if those books, if you're thinking to yourself, like, my reader wouldn't read that, then there's a disconnect there. And it's time to figure out what it is. Maybe you're using the wrong keywords. Maybe you're in the wrong categories. Maybe, and if everything seems okay, but there's still something off, that goes back to what you were saying, Penny, about sometimes maybe it's a cover thing. Maybe it's your branding for the book that doesn't quite fit in, that's become a hurdle to converting, shoppers and browsers into actual buyers. Mm-hmm. But those are two very telltale signs that if you're looking up your keywords, looking through your categories, if you feel like you're at the right party, then you're on the right track. But for a lot of authors, they're kind of like, well, that's not, and we work with authors on these strategies, and we do get pushback sometimes where they go, well, that's not me. And in our professional opinion, it's like, this is definitely where you should be. So if this is seeming odd or misplaced to you, then this is a bigger conversation we should be having with you about how you've aligned yourself and who your readers really are.
Right, exactly. And I also think that, I love to read reviews of other books that I feel are similar to mine, that I like to read those reviews and see, because the people who review books in your genre, those are your people. Those are potentially your readers that are going to then come to your book. Read through some of those reviews and see what they're talking about, see what they love, see what they don't love so much about the book that they just read. See what they'd like to see more of, or maybe see less of. Not only will that help to shape the reader profile that Amy suggested, but it'll also help to better shape your reader. Like if you're really lost in this regard and you don't know, take a look at the reader reviews. Those always tell such a great story. And as well, read the reviews so if you have a book that's out and there are a bunch of reviews on there and your reviews aren't great, read those reviews and see what feedback people are getting you. Because the first book that I have, I don't know, I have 18 or so books out. It's not like I can't keep track of my children, right? But I don't know, I think I have 18 children, maybe I have 19, I don't really know. But, I keep doing new editions of books, so I don't know if that necessarily counts as a new book. But anyway, the first book that I published a million years ago, somebody came back to me and gave me a really negative review on it. And he wasn't being mean, right? He was just like, well, this is how I feel about this book. And after I got done, because, getting negative reviews is always tough. After I got done rocking in the corner, I reread what he wrote and I thought, yeah, he really has a point. So and in the next update of the book, don't you know that I absolutely incorporated that and sent him a copy.
Yep. Very smart. I love that.
So you can also learn from reader reviews. So step one is make sure that you're targeting the right readers. I mean, it sounds really basic, but I'll tell you what, the books that do really well versus the books that don't, difference is that the difference is always the targeting. Right.
They find the right people.
They find the right people. Absolutely.
And I will say we don't talk about this a lot, but just going back to reading reviews, I figured it's like, we should remind people, not just Amazon, but read Goodreads.
Oh yeah.
Reviews and responses and groups for genre specific books, because they really get into it a lot more in depth than a typical Amazon review, I would say. So those are also, I would say, don't forget about Goodreads when you're really trying to dig into what genre readers really like and don't like and what they're, kind of responding to.
Right.
Whereas Amazon, you have one person's opinion. Sometimes it's a sentence, sometimes it's a paragraph, and it's helpful. Goodreads is really a great platform that supports conversations back and forth about these things that can give you some additional insight into what's going on in your genre.
That's a great idea. That's really a great idea. And then finally, I want to say that, and Amy, you say this all the time. We talk about this. Be a fan of your market, right?
Yes.
Read competing book titles. This goes back to the Christina George example of the paranormal romance. You know, she was sort of like, well, I really want to write this. And, you know.
So she had a great idea.
Right.
I mean, well, no, but I mean, the inspiration was there, and why not run with it?
Right, exactly. But you've got to be a fan of, you've got to read other books in your market, and you've got to know what, you know, understand what readers want and give that to them. Because if you don't, you're not going to, that your joy is going to stop with uploading your book onto Amazon, and that's going to be it.
That's very true, because we get people that come to us, and when we ask them, who did you write this book for? And I'll be totally honest, if any of you are listening, when Penny and I see the answer is myself, we both go, oh, because while you should write what you love and you should enjoy what you do, that is not a recipe for long-term success, at least not, you know, the version that most people think of when they start writing, when they become an author. You know, there's nothing wrong with publishing a book because that was on your bucket list and that's what you want to do. But if that's what you want to do for a living and be really successful at it and sell a lot of books, writing for yourself is not going to cut it.
Right. No, that's absolutely true. And the other piece of this is that when you are a fan of your market, when you are really truly a fan of your market, and fan and expert, we kind of use that term interchangeably, you start to understand and spot and maybe even predict nuances, changes, trends, things that are going to be coming. And you're not always right. I mean, I sometimes write books to trends that I think are, and I'm not always right. But if you know your market and you're willing to take that chance, knowing your market also gives you maybe new areas and opportunities to send your book. So we had a book a number of years ago, and the book was letters. It was letters home. So it was letters that her father had written, then his fiance, during World War II. And her father had since passed away. So she had to do all of this research, put these letters together. There was a lot of genealogy involved. And this was before all the ancestry testing and all that. So it kind of boomed, and like everybody's now a genealogist. So so we pitched this to specific genealogy websites, and going after ones that had big audiences and newsletters. And one newsletter ran a review of her book, and the link to buy the book. And she literally sold like 6,000 copies of this book from one obscure newsletter that you and I, Amy, have probably never even heard of. So by knowing your market, the other piece of this is that these kinds of crazy out of the box opportunities, you'll think, well, I'm just going to take but what she did is she went after her specific market. So sure, she had a big World War II market. Absolutely. Family history and genealogy was a bigger market for her.
Yes.
Surprisingly enough.
Yep. Again, that focused, it's so much easier to manage too. And there's nothing wrong with that, you know?
Right. Exactly. So this has been really fun. I know we said we weren't going to, you and I both sort of get lost in this conversation because there is so much to talk about.
I know, we start geeking out. It's like, we could talk about this forever. And everybody's like, okay.
I know. Just talk about all these examples that have we really love book marketing, which sounds super nerdy, but I am admittedly a total nerd.
Oh yeah.
But we are, in the next session, we're going to talk more about sales. We're going to talk about another aspect of it, and we're going to take you through the entire funnel, hopefully, at least the majority of it for most of you, to get you from putting the book up on Amazon to actually selling copies. And hopefully this podcast is designed to help you be more successful. And I hope you had a little bit of fun in the process. So I want to close out the show. I love when Amy finds fun, great, awesome, amazing authors who are doing really fabulous stuff. And we're going to put all this stuff in the show notes as well. Amy, do you have anybody you want to share?
Yes, and this is another author that was featured in our Master Amazon video series recently, our membership. So she's doing a lot of things right because we've used her for different examples. So she's just really on the ball. It's Catherine Ash. That's Ash with an E. And again, we'll put a link out so you guys can check it out because it's really inspiring. But she's just done such an amazing job at creating an extended world beyond just her books. And she makes the entire experience of buying her books an immersive experience. So it's not just spend money on my book. It's buy my book and welcome to this entire world of additional content. And she's really smart about it because a lot of what she does, when you go and look at her website, she's put it together really well, but so much of this has had to have been in her head already, or things from the cutting room floor, bits and pieces that were already in her head or that she already has outlined that she repurposed. So she was just really smart about using all of that creative energy and content that authors create when they're writing. But she's got character interviews. She has messages that are kind of written up almost like a blog post, but from her characters that take you deeper into the story and what they're about. Behind the scenes, kind of sneak peeks at her process and how the stories were developed. She has recipes. She has maps. I loved the fun facts, which was really cool because she does different series. So she has some kind of just fun facts that make the world seem that much more real.
Yeah.
And then she also included her inspiration behind some of her series and where she got the ideas. And those were also really unique. I mean, most of the time, I guess maybe personally, I don't write books. I just like to market them. But I think authors probably forget how interesting those inspiration stories are because they're too close to it. But I think, readers love that kind of insider info on how everything started. And she's just done such a fabulous job at creating this extra content and building that relationship with her readers that keeps them coming back. And what's great is that kind of proactive use of content and the relationship building is what will sustain you between your book releases. It keeps you connected to them even when you don't have a massive announcement like, oh, I have a new book coming out. And, it's really great to have that kind of, I think that those content pieces and, those just extras on your website and through your platform that keeps people coming back in between. That saves you a lot of actually other marketing efforts. When you have all this content built up and these great freebies, you're actually relieving yourself of some other marketing activities that you'd have to do if that wasn't in existence.
Yeah, no, I think that we profiled her in one of the videos in that series, and I love her website. I think she has just done, she's done so many great, you can really get lost in all the content that she's offering.
But it didn't seem overwhelming, right? I mean,
No,
I'm sure she definitely put effort into it, but it wasn't like, oh, this had to have been expensive, or, oh, she probably spent, weeks and weeks pulling this together. It's like, no, I mean, I think all of this stuff was just in her head.
Yeah.
And she just very smartly put it down on her website so other people could enjoy it too. It was just brilliant.
Yeah. Yeah, she did a really good job. And this goes to show anything that you have that's on the cutting room floor that you couldn't include or that you argued with your editor over pulling or whatever, you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. That's what she did with this. And that's absolutely fabulous. I love that. That's a great example.
Yeah. And that's again, she knew that those relationships were important in keeping people interested in her brand in between book releases. And she's done very well. I'm pretty positive she has multiple bestsellers, and she didn't run out of the gate like that, but she built that herself.
Yeah, she really did. Yeah, and there's a reason that it says best-selling author at the top of her page, because she's obviously she has worked very hard to turn her readers into relationships, and I think that's just so smart. And I don't know if you noticed, but on her homepage she has a little button that says for Halloween. So she's also doing things that are seasonal, which is just so smart.
I know. And I guarantee she's a fan. You can tell she's like in it. She knows what it feels like to be a reader and how much these kind of little touches mean to people.
Yeah.
You know, books are such a personal thing. Books are not typically impulse buys. Like they mean a lot. You spend a little bit of money, but you spend a lot of time reading a book, you know?
Yeah.
And I would like to think that most authors are also book lovers too, you know? And so sometimes it's good to step out of like, you know, your author shoes and put on your reader shoes and let all those like ideas, you know, kind of flow about what you would want as a reader, you know, as a fan.
Yeah.
That should be really inspiring.
Yeah, creating that immersive world. I love that she's doing this. So we will put the links in the show notes so you can take a look at her fun and engaging website and all of her social media and just kind of see what she's doing. And hopefully it'll spark some ideas. Thank you all so much for listening. We've had a blast.
Oh, yeah.
Amy, thank you for spending the time.
Of course.
This was really, really fun. And we will see you for the next show. Thank you so much for tuning in. This is Penny Sansevieri and Amy Cornell of Author Marketing Experts. And we're so glad that you listened. Bye-bye.